On this video, I am going to discuss my favorite Bible verse and why. You've probably heard me say that Genesis is my favorite book in the Bible. You've probably heard me say that Genesis chapter 1 is my favorite chapter in the Bible. And you've probably heard me say that chapter 1, verse 1 is my favorite verse in the Bible. Well, now you're going to find out why. Because Genesis 1:1 is it's something that only God could do. And it's not just a literary masterpiece. It's just so full of so much that it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around. And I'm just going to touch on it in the amount of time we have here today. I promise you will see things and experience things in this video that you've never seen before. So it's going to blow your mind. Here we go. So in Genesis 1, in English, Genesis 1:1 in English has 10 words. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But in Hebrew, there are 7 words. And those 7 words we find right here. We find Bereshit, bara, Elohim, et, hashamayim, va'et, haaretz. Now, if you're not Hebrew and you don't read Hebrew, that means probably next to nothing to you. But if you understand first and foremost, I'm going to write some notes on the board. First and foremost, Hebrew words are not just spelled. Hebrew words are built. So what do I mean Hebrew words are built? So if I wrote this on the board, what is that? This equals what? Say it out loud.
Water.
That's water. But I didn't write W-A-T-E-R. I wrote H2O, but you knew it was water. Why? Because you know the components of water are 1 part hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen, so you know that that's talking about water. Well, every Hebrew letter is not just a letter, a phonic sound, but it's also a building block, or it has a definition, a meaning, it has a constructive purpose. And so the first word, the letter Aleph, which we see, this is the letter Aleph, 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 this is the letter Aleph. It's the first letter in the Hebrew Aleph Beit. So we say, in America, we don't say Aleph Beit, we say what? Alphabet, right? Well, alphabet, that's an interesting word, right? Where does that come from? Well, Aleph Beit, Aleph is the first letter in the Hebrew Aleph Beit, Beit is the second letter. Our word alphabet comes from the term Aleph Beit. Okay, so that's kind of cool. But not only are these letters, but they're also numbers. So Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud. All of those are not just letters, they're also numbers. So the letter Aleph is the number 1. The letter Beit is the number 2. The letter Gimel is the number 3. Are y'all tracking so far? So there are 22 letters in the Hebrew Aleph Beit. Some of them have different, some letters have multiple shapes. What if they show up at the end of a letter, at the end of a word, or in the middle of a word, at the beginning of a word? They shape differently. It's called final form. You don't need to know that, but just in case you see something, I say, well, that letter, this letter here is a tzaddik, and so tzaddik looks different in the beginning of a word than it does at the end of a word. But you don't really need to know all that. What you want to know is that there's meaning in everything. So these things are called nakud. In the New Testament, they are referred to as jots and tittles. Why? Because the Hebrew language doesn't have vowels. It only has consonants. So what they do is they mark the vowel sounds under the letters. So, not that you need to know all of that, but it's helpful to know you're not just looking at a bunch of marks on a page. It all has meaning. So if we just start there, it all has meaning. Right? Now, in English, we read from left to right, but in Hebrew, we read from right to left. I heard one rabbi say it shows, or it infers that God knows the end from the beginning. I really love that idea. Okay, so I'm going to take off some of this stuff that I wrote on here. Okay, so you can count to 400. You can count to 400 with 22 letters. How do you count to 400 with 22 letters? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400. Okay? So that's what the 22 letters represent. Are y'all with me so far? Okay. So the first word in the Hebrew, in Genesis 1:1 is the word Breshit. Now, the letter Beit is the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's the second letter, and it's the beginning of the first word in the Torah, or the first word in the Bible begins with a Beit. And Beit is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, not the first letter. The letter Aleph is the number 1, but it also represents God, which, like when you see the letter Aleph, that letter represents God. It's made of 2 yods and a vav. A yod is a hand, a vav is a nail or a connector. So the letter that represents God is made of 2 hands and a nail, which I think is really kind of cool and fascinating. But the Torah doesn't begin with an aleph. It begins with a beit. And beit, this letter beit is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It means house. That's the meaning of it, house. We know it means house, even though we never thought about it before, because you've heard of the name Bethlehem, right? But it's really Beit Lechem. Beit Lechem. Lechem is bread. Beit is house. Beit Lechem is the house of bread. Okay, y'all tracking? Okay, so that's what I mean when I say words are built. Now, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters in the first word in the book in Genesis, and this first word is so mind-blowing because if we parse the letters differently, these 2 words together spell the word bar. So, in fact, I'm going to write it over here. So, bar. The word bar in Hebrew is the word son. Now, the word ben is also the word son, but the word bar is also the word son. We know that it's the word son if we read the Bible. Even if we don't know it, we know it. Why? Because we know Simon bar Jonas, Simon son of Jonas. We know blind bar Timaeus, the blind son of Timaeus. We know Barabbas, Abba. What's Abba? Abba's father. Bar is son, Barabbas, son of the father. Are y'all tracking? Doesn't it, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm starting to see things more clearly now, right? So the letter bar is son, Beit Resh, son, the letter Aleph represents God, so the first thing we see is the son of God. The letter Shin, it represents teeth, but it means destruction. Also represents fire. It means destruction. So the Son of God is destroyed. Yod is a hand with his hand, and the Tav is a cross or a covenant. So the Son of God is destroyed with his hand on a cross for our covenant, the first word in the Bible, in Hebrew. So it's telling a story even in the individual words. Are y'all tracking? But then it says, Breshit bara. The word bara means to create out of nothing. The only person who ever baras anything is God. People say you can speak things into existence. Myron says, no, you can't. Oh, you create your own reality. No, you don't, bro. You don't create your own reality. You create your own experience in reality. That's very different. Only God created reality. You don't get to create your own reality. You get to create your own experience in reality. So the word bara means to create. Now, you've heard the word bara before, even though you didn't know you heard the word bara. But you've probably heard the word what's that? Abara kadabra. But I spelled it in Hebrew. God. Bara, creates. In Hebrew, the verbs come first. God creates as, ha, the letter ha is the word as. Dabar is to speak. Dabar, this word, speak, God. God creates as speaks God. So God, this word bara, we've heard before. Isn't it fascinating that God is the only one who can bara, and the word that we use for a magician pulling something out of a hat, something out of nothing, is abara kadabara. God creates as God speaks. Isn't that fascinating? Anyway, it's fascinating to me. Okay, then you have the word Elohim. Elohim begins with an aleph, the second letter is a lamet. So Elohim is not God's name. God is not God's name. God is God's title. Like you hear people say, well, my name is Dr. So-and-so, so-and-so. No, that's not your name. Your title is doctor. Your name is your name. They're not the same, right? My name is Pastor so-and-so. No, your name's not Pastor so-and-so. Your title is pastor. Your name is. God is God's title, not God's name. Okay, y'all tracking? So this word here, see, in English it's three words, but in Hebrew it's only two. It's in beginning. It's one word, but in beginning. Rashit is beginning. In beginning, created, Elohim. Then there's this really interesting little word right here, et. Et. Et is not even translatable into English. I don't think it's translatable into any other language, is it? Is it translatable? I don't think it's translatable into any other language, but it's not definitely not translatable into English, so they left it out. But if you leave it out, it changes the meaning. Brashit bara Elohim et. What is et? Et is the first letter and the last letter of the aleph beit. In the beginning, created God with the aleph tav. What is that? The aleph tav is the whole aleph beit, his word. It reminds you of John 1:1, doesn't it? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God, and without him, and by him was everything made, and without him was not anything made that was made, John 1:1. This reminds us of John 1. With that being there, we can see, okay, so God created everything with the aleph tav. The aleph tav, these are the components. The aleph beit, the entire Hebrew aleph beit is the component, or the components that make up the words. And then it says, ha-shamayim. Ha is the, shamayim is the heavens, but shamayim is water. Ha-shamayim is actually the sky waters. That's what the word is in Hebrew. It's the sky waters. The heavens are the sky waters. Do you remember what it says in Genesis 1? It says, and God put a firmament where? In the heavens. What was the firmament? It's a water canopy in the heavens. Ha-shamayim. Va'et, and with the aleph tav. Va is the word and. It's the letter vav. It's the nail. It's the connector. And with the aleph tav. Isn't it interesting in the book of Revelation? Jesus says, I am the beginning and the end. I am the what? Alpha and Omega. Is Jesus a Greek or was he a Hebrew? So what is he? He is the aleph tav. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It says, and with the aleph tav, he created the earth. This is what Genesis 1:1, there's so much richness in here. We say, oh, the Son of God. We talked about the fact that the letter Aleph represents God. It's made of two yuds and an L. But we talked about the fact that Elohim is not God's name. It's interesting that the Lamed is a picture of the shepherd's hook, but the letter Lamed represents the word towards, to pull something towards, right? And so it's interesting that the letter Elohim, or the word Elohim is God's title, but what is God's name? What do we say? What is God's name? Anybody know? Yahweh, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. This is the word. I can't move it. Oh, I can move this. This is so great. Juwan, you're great. Okay, so Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. That's interesting. What is Yud-Heh Vav-Heh? Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. This is the hand. The letter Hey means to behold. What do you say when you want somebody to look? You say, hey! Right? Well, do you ever wonder where that came? It's the letter hey. That's what it literally means. It means hey. It means behold. So the hand, behold, the vav is a nail. The nail, behold. That's the name that represents God. You say, Myron, what is your point? My point is that God does what God does the way God does it, and because he doesn't change, it's always been the same. We think that there's some new thing happening. And it doesn't matter if we go from here, the hand behold, the nail behold, two hands and a nail. It doesn't matter if we're doing that, or if we go and we just look at Genesis chapter 3, after man sins, and then Adam and Eve make themselves aprons. They sew fig leaves together and make themselves aprons to cover themselves up. And God says, that'll never do. And God made them coats of skin, and there was a sacrifice. That sacrifice is a picture of the future Lamb of God who would shed his blood to take away the sins of the world. It doesn't matter if we go in, I think it's Genesis chapter 4, where Cain kills Abel, because Abel wanted to bring God a sacrifice, which was the works of his hands, which is a type. It's a picture of religion. I want you to accept me based on the work I do. But Abel brought God a blood sacrifice. And God accepted Abel's sacrifice because Abel's sacrifice was a picture of the future Lamb of God who would take away the sins of the world. Do you see? All of this fits together. Or maybe if you go fast forward and you go a little bit farther and you go all the way up to Genesis chapter 15, when God says to Abram, when Abram says, comes to Abram, the Lord appears to Abram, he says, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. By the way, like, God has a message for us. I am your shield, I'm your exceeding great reward. What does that mean? That means I am your shield, your protection, and I am your exceeding great reward. I am your provision. Like, why are we worried when God doesn't change? He's just, this Elohim, I am your shield, your exceeding great reward. That's what God comes to Abram and says. And you know what Abram says? You know what he said? Same thing we say. What will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of mine house is this Eliezer of Damascus? Why is he asking him that? What kind of question is that? What are you going to give me, seeing I go childless? He's asking him that because God appeared to Abram in Genesis chapter 12 and said, leave your country, leave your kindred, leave your father's house. Go to a land that I will show you, and I will bless you in ways you can't bless yourself. I will make you something you can't make yourself. I will give you something you can't get yourself. And I'll take the source of your shame and make it the source of your fame. He said, I will make your name great. Why is God telling Abram, I'll make your name great? Well, easy. Because Abram's name gave him imposter syndrome. What do you mean Abram's name gave him imposter syndrome? His name was Exalted Father, Abram. It means Exalted Father. But guess what? He couldn't have any children. So he's the Exalted Father with no children. So every time somebody called his name, it reminded him of who he was not. Imagine that pain. And God says, but if you leave, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. I'm not just going to make you the exalted father. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. I'm not going to make you the father of one nation. I'm not going to make you the father of two nations. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Abraham went home and said, Sarai, we leaving. And y'all know, women have questions. You also know men don't always have answers. Now, I don't know if this was Sarai's question or not, but it probably sounded something like this. Where are we going? Amy said, let me get back to that. What's question number 2? Where are we going? Here's where we're going. God said he'll show me when we get there.
That's it.
You got to understand how big this is. God is saying to Abram, I want you to abandon everything that you know. I want you to abandon everything you know, and I want you to go to a place that I will show you when you get there. So I want you to get comfortable living in uncertainty for a season. Anybody else in here feeling a little Abramish, right? I want you to get comfortable living in uncertainty for a season. And then I'm going to bless you in ways you can't bless yourself, make you something you can't make yourself, give you something you can't get yourself. I'm going to take the source of your shame, make it the source of your fame, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Here's something interesting. God doesn't just have a desire to bless individuals. God has a desire to bless families. He said, I'm going to bless all the families of the earth in you. Let me ask you a question. Are you okay being uncomfortable for a season so you can be a blessing to families? If you're not ready for an Abrahamic journey. Guys, I'll show you that you're there when you get there, which means for the majority of your life, you ain't going to be in your where you used to be, the place you know, and you ain't going to be in your there, the place you're going. And if you're cool with that, God doesn't say if you're cool with that. But if you do that, I'm going to bless you in ways you can't currently imagine. That was in Genesis chapter 12. So in Genesis chapter 13, the next chapter, here's what it says. It says, and Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. Abram had the stuff. But he's going to be a blessing to families, and he can't even have a family. Are you okay leaving the land of the familiar so you can be a blessing and bless people with something you don't even have yet? Oh, snap. And then he gets to chapter 14, and the only semblance of a family he had was Lot, his brother's son, and his brother had passed away. And then Lot goes down to Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's like doing business down there in Sodom and Gomorrah. And then all of a sudden, these 5 nations rise up against Sodom, the king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah, and they go in, they conquer those nations, because Sodom and Gomorrah were cities, but they weren't just cities, they were kingdoms. Cities in the Bible were kingdoms. Like the city of Jericho had a king. The city of Sodom had a king. The city of Gomorrah had a king. Cities had kings because cities weren't just like Tampa's a city. Cities were kingdoms. Are y'all tracking? And so 5 nations came up, conquered Sodom, conquered Gomorrah, took all their people captive, took all their stuff. Somebody escaped and came and told Abram, hey, they came up against Sodom and Gomorrah. They took everybody, including your nephew. Abram said, they took who? I'm imagining this 70-something-year-old man said, no, they didn't get my nephew. Saddle up, boys. It says he armed 318 servants that were born in his house. And this businessman went out and waged war against 5 nations and won. And won. Brought back his nephew, brought back all his nephew's stuff, brought back all of the people of Sodom and Sodom's stuff. And the king of Sodom tried to pay Abram. He said, oh, no, you can't pay me. I don't want you to be able to tell people you made me rich. Give to the young men who came and helped me, give them their portion, but I don't want anything from you. God's my source. He is my shield and my exceeding great reward. So Abram has this great victory, right? And so the next chapter, it says, God comes to Abram and says, fear not, Abram, I am your shield and your exceeding great reward. Abram says, what will you give me seeing I go childless? And the steward of mine house is this Eliezer of Damascus, but yet you've given no seed. And so now I'm going to have to leave all the stuff you gave me to my butler. God said, this shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And then God said, he said, here's what you do. He said, take a she-goat 3 years old, a heifer 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. He said, kill these animals. He said, cut them in pieces, but don't cut up the birds. And it says, Abram did that. So he got these 2 piles of animal carcass. And it says, and when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. This is one of the most amazing stories in the whole Bible to me. A deep sleep fell upon Abram. And then God starts talking to Abram while he's asleep. He says, Abram, he says, yeah, you're going to have a seed, and your seed's going to become great, and then they're going to go into a foreign nation, and that nation, they're going to serve them for 400 years. And after they serve them for 400 years, Abram's like, ain't hearing a word of it. Why is this why is God talking to Abram while he's asleep? And why is God telling us what he told Abram while he's asleep? Abram don't even know. Like, we know stuff about what God said when Abram was asleep. Abram never heard. Like, why? Because God is showing us that he doesn't keep his word to us because we know what his word says. He keeps his word to us because he knows what his word says. Are y'all tracking? And he says, and I'm going to bring, and by the way, they're going to serve him for 400 years. They're going to treat him really, really bad, but I'm going to bring him out after 400 years. I'm going to bring him out with great substance. It says, and then it says, it came to pass, when the sun went down, it was dark. Behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between those pieces. Why? Because this was a covenant. When you cut up animals, the word covenant means to cut. So the reason he had him kill those animals and cut those animals, because God was entering a covenant with Abram. But Abram couldn't do the covenant walk where you stand back to back and you will come around, you're face to face, and you cut your hand. Abram couldn't do that for two reasons. One, he would have been face to face with God. He would have had to die. Two, Abram couldn't keep the covenant. So he had to die. Now he's in double jeopardy. So what does God do? God puts Abram to sleep and gives him a substitute to take his place. And so the burning lamp, which is a type of God the Son. What did Jesus say in John chapter 9? He said, I am the light of the world. The smoking furnace is a picture of God the Father. When God came down and spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, the smoke ascended like the smoke of a great what? Furnace. It came to pass when the sun went down, it was dark. Behold, a smoking furnace, a burning lamp passed between those pieces. This is such a beautiful. So what's happening is the burning lamp is taking Abram's place, entering the covenant on Abram's behalf with God the Father, and they come back in the middle, and the Father says to the burning lamp, who's representing Abram, if I don't keep my word, which I've given Abram, may what happened to these animals happen to me. And the burning lamp is saying, knowing that Abram couldn't keep the covenant, if Abram doesn't keep the covenant, may what happened to these animals happen to me. All of that is part of this beautiful story. And Jesus is the burning lamp that promised to give his life if Abram couldn't keep the covenant, knowing Abram couldn't keep the covenant. Genesis is my favorite book in the Bible because everything starts there and God doesn't change. It all stays the same the whole way throughout Scripture. It just keeps telling the same story in different ways. And I'm telling you that when we understand the greatness of our God, who could put something this magnificent together and have the whole thing conceived, scripted, and produced in an instant, that is a God worth living for. Knowing that we couldn't, okay, I gotta tell you this. It's the last thing I'm gonna tell you. One of the reasons people feel unfulfilled is because God made us in his image, which means God created, that's the first thing he tells us about God. He created the heavens and the earth. God made us to make stuff. He created us to create stuff. Well, we don't feel fulfilled unless we're creating something. But guess what? When God created everything in Genesis chapter 1, he created 3 categories. How many categories? 3. He created creation, the sun, the moon, the stars, the water, the grass, and the trees. And the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the water, the grass, and the trees can't even appreciate the God that created them. They can't fellowship with the God that created them. They're just stuff. So then he created creatures, the dogs, the cats, the chickens, the alligators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they can't appreciate the God that made them either. They can do rudimentary things, and an eagle can build a nest, and a beaver can build a dam, and an ant can make them an anthill, but they can't contemplate God. So God said, I'm going to make man in our image. I'm going to make someone who's like us, but not us. And God made man. So God created creation. He created creatures. And then he created creators. Why? Because God made man for connection. He created creatures and creation for creativity's sake. But he created men and women, for connection. God created man so he could have somebody who could appreciate who he is, how he is, and that he is. And if you're missing that, you're missing the point. You're never going to feel fulfilled. You are made for connection. That's when God said about Adam, it's not good for man to be alone. God knew that because God knows everything, but he also knew it because man's made in the image of God, and it wasn't good for God to be alone. That's why we feel fulfilled when we're connected with other people. If you are an island and you do everything in your power to avoid other people, you are a miserable soul. If the only person you can think about helping is you, you are a miserable soul. But when you are looking for establishing connections with God and with other people, you are going to be more fulfilled. But guess what man did? Man severed the connection. Adam and Eve sinned in Genesis chapter 3. And the connection between God and the creatives that he made to be like him and to be with him severed the connection. And there was nothing we could do to reestablish the connection. So God reestablished it for us with a contribution of coats of skins, a sacrifice. God restored the connection himself. And he did it in a picture until 2025 years ago, he did it in a person. When he came down the stairway of heaven and was born in Bethlehem, baptized in Jordan, tempted in the wilderness, healed multitudes without medicine and made no charges for his service. And then he died on the cross in your place and my place. And then he did something so miraculous, it boggles the mind. He didn't stay dead. He got up on the third day and redeemed us from the penalty and the punishment of sin. And one day he will come and redeem us from the presence of sin. But watch this. Just like God gave a contribution to people who had nothing to offer him, I'm made in the image of God. If I'm creating and I'm connecting, but I'm not contributing, I feel unfulfilled. Why? Because I was made in the image of God, and I can only be fulfilled when I am being more like God. And I'm creating something, I'm connecting with someone, and I'm contributing, especially to people who have nothing to offer me. That's why God commends us and commands us to support widows and orphans, to help those who don't yet have the ability to help themselves. When we get that, we will have a level of fulfillment that's so much higher than the car we drive, the house we live in, the jewelry we wear, or the vacations we take. That we won't be in a hurry to get there. We will realize that the journey itself and here, where we are right now, is there if we have the ability to recognize it. So I hope Genesis 1:1, next time you read it, blesses you like it blesses me. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye for now.